Marie Dubois had always believed that being a nurse meant putting patients first, no matter what. At 29, she was a dedicated ICU nurse at Metropolitan General Hospital, one of the most prestigious medical centers in Dallas. She had worked her way up from a small-town clinic, earning her master's degree in nursing while working full-time, driven by one simple belief: every patient deserved the best possible care. What Marie didn't know was that her commitment to patient safety was about to make her the target of the most dangerous corruption scandal in the hospital's history. Dr. Harrison Blackwell was the chief of surgery and the hospital's golden boy. Handsome, charming, and brilliant, he was featured on magazine covers and medical journals as the future of American surgery. But behind his perfect smile was a man who had turned medicine into a money-making scheme that put profits above patients. "Marie, you need to understand something," Dr. Blackwell said during one of their first encounters. "This isn't some small-town clinic where you can hold everyone's hand. We're running a business here, and business means making tough decisions." Marie had noticed irregularities in Dr. Blackwell's surgeries almost immediately. Patients who should have had simple procedures were being given complex, expensive operations. Recovery times were mysteriously longer, requiring extended hospital stays. Most disturbing of all, some patients were developing complications that seemed entirely preventable. Dr. Blackwell. Marie approached him after a particularly troubling surgery. Mrs. Patterson's appendectomy took 3 hours and required a bowel resection. Her pre-op scans showed a simple, uncomplicated appendicitis. "Sometimes complications arise during surgery," Dr. Blackwell replied coldly. "That's why we're doctors and you're a nurse. We see things you can't understand." But Marie kept meticulous records. She documented every surgery, every complication, every extended stay. What she was unknowingly uncovering was a systematic scheme where Dr. Blackwell was performing unnecessary procedures, extending hospital stays, and billing insurance companies for treatments that patients never needed. The scheme involved the entire surgical department. Anesthesiologist Dr. Sarah Chen would keep patients under longer than necessary, creating justification for extended procedures. Hospital Administrator Patricia Wells would ensure that insurance claims went through without scrutiny. Head nurse supervisor Janet Morgan would alter patient charts to support the false medical narratives. Marie asks too many questions. Dr. Chen complained during a department meeting that Marie wasn't invited to. "She's starting to notice patterns that could be problematic." "Don't worry," Dr. Blackwell assured her. "Nurses like Marie don't last long when they can't follow simple directions." Marie's downfall began when she tried to advocate for an elderly patient named Robert Kim. Mr. Kim had come in for a routine gallbladder surgery, but Dr. Blackwell had somehow found reasons to perform additional procedures that kept him in the hospital for 3 weeks. His recovery should have taken 3 days, Marie told her supervisor, Janet Morgan. "Why are we keeping him sedated? His lab results don't justify continued intensive care." "Marie," Janet said with false concern, "I think the stress of ICU work might be affecting your judgment. Mr. Kim is a very sick man who needs extensive care." But Marie refused to back down. She documented every medication Mr. Kim received, every test that was ordered, every procedure that was performed. She was building a case without realizing it, evidence that would prove Dr. Blackwell was essentially torturing patients for profit. The trap was set when Mr. Kim's condition suddenly deteriorated. He developed a severe infection that, according to his chart, was caused by Marie's negligent nursing care. The falsified records showed that Marie had failed to follow proper sterilization protocols, missed critical symptoms, and ignored doctors' orders. "I'm sorry, Marie," hospital administrator Patricia Wells said as security escorted her from the building. "But Mr. Kim's infection was directly caused by your negligence. His family is talking about a malpractice lawsuit, and we can't keep a nurse who puts patients at risk." The evidence against Marie was overwhelming because it had been carefully fabricated. Security cameras had been malfunctioned during critical moments. Her electronic access records had been altered to show she had been in Mr. Kim's room during times when she was actually in surgery with other patients. Most damaging of all, her supervisor Janet Morgan testified that Marie had been acting erratically and ignoring protocols for weeks. Marie was always questioning doctors' orders, Janet told the nursing board investigation. "She seemed to think she knew better than our surgeons. I tried to mentor her, but she was too arrogant to accept guidance." Marie lost her nursing license, her career, and her reputation. The story made local news. Negligent nurse causes patient infection at prestigious hospital. No hospital would hire her. No nursing program would accept her, and her dream of helping people seemed destroyed. Forever. "You should have minded your own business," Dr. Blackwell told her during a chance encounter at a coffee shop. "Medicine is complicated. Sometimes patients get sick. That's not our fault. That's just life." But losing her nursing license became the beginning of Marie's real education. She enrolled in law school, specializing in medical malpractice and healthcare law. She worked nights as a medical transcriptionist to pay for her education, using her access to medical records to study patterns of healthcare fraud. "They destroyed my nursing career," Marie told her law school advisor, "but they gave me something more powerful. They taught me exactly how corruption works from the inside." During law school, Marie began reaching out to other healthcare workers who had been silenced, fired, or discredited for speaking up about patient safety. She discovered a network of nurses, doctors, and administrators who had tried to report corruption only to have their careers destroyed. "There are dozens of us," Dr. Linda Martinez told Marie during a secret meeting. "Healthcare workers who tried to do the right thing and got crushed by the system. But we all have pieces of the puzzle." Marie spent 3 years in law school building the most comprehensive case against healthcare fraud that anyone had ever assembled. She had witness testimonies, financial records, patient outcomes data, and most importantly, she understood exactly how the corruption worked because she had been its victim. After law school, Marie took a job with the state medical board as a legal investigator. Her job was to investigate complaints against doctors and hospitals, determining whether medical licenses should be suspended or revoked. Her personal experience with medical fraud made her incredibly skilled at identifying patterns of corruption. Marie has an unusual ability to see through false documentation, her supervisor noted in her performance review. She spots inconsistencies that other investigators miss. Within 2 years, Marie had successfully investigated dozens of medical fraud cases. Her conviction rate was 94%, and she had developed a reputation as the investigator who never gave up on a case. Healthcare executives across the state began to fear her name. The fraud hunter, Medical Daily called her in a profile article. The investigator who understands corruption because she's lived through it. But Marie's ultimate goal was to become the director of the state medical board. The position, with the power to shut down corrupt hospitals and revoke medical licenses permanently. She studied healthcare administration, medical ethics, and regulatory law with the intensity of someone who had a personal mission to fulfill. When the previous director retired, Marie's qualifications were undeniable. She had a nursing background, a law degree, and the most successful investigation record in the board's history. The governor appointed her as the youngest medical board director in Texas history. Sometimes the best regulators are those who have experienced a system from multiple perspectives, the governor said during her appointment ceremony. Director Dubois understands patient care, legal standards, and the real-world consequences of medical fraud. Meanwhile, Metropolitan General Hospital's corruption scheme was finally beginning to unravel. The FBI had been investigating healthcare fraud across multiple states, and patients who had suffered under Dr. Blackwell's unnecessary procedures were beginning to come forward. Metropolitan General under federal investigation, read the headline in the Dallas Morning News. Prestigious hospital accused of insurance fraud, patient abuse, and systematic medical negligence. Dr. Blackwell was desperate. The federal investigation was exposing years of fraudulent billing, unnecessary procedures, and patient harm. He needed the state medical board to overlook the violations, or at least impose minimal penalties that would allow the hospital to continue operating. We need to request a meeting with the medical board, Dr. Blackwell told Patricia Wells. Explain that these are just misunderstandings, clerical errors. We've been serving this community for decades. The hospital's legal team arranged a formal hearing with the state medical board to address the federal charges. They prepared a presentation showing the hospital's charity work, medical innovations, and community service, hoping to convince the board that the fraud charges were exaggerated. This will be routine, the hospital's attorney assured Dr. Blackwell. Medical boards are usually staffed by bureaucrats who don't understand the complexities of modern healthcare. We'll explain the situation and get a slap on the wrist. Dr. Blackwell arrived at the state medical board offices in his most expensive suit, accompanied by a team of high-powered attorneys and hospital administrators. He was confident that his reputation and the hospital's influence would protect him from serious consequences. As he entered the hearing room, he noticed that it was unusually crowded. FBI agents, patient advocates, and reporters filled the gallery. The atmosphere was tense, formal, and intimidating. "Good morning," a familiar voice said from the front of the room. "I am Director Marie Dubois, and this hearing will address the serious allegations against Metropolitan General Hospital and Dr. Harrison Blackwell." Dr. Blackwell's face went pale as he recognized the woman sitting at the head of the board table. The woman in the professional business suit, speaking with quiet authority about medical standards and patient safety, was the same nurse he had framed and destroyed 5 years earlier. "Dr. Blackwell," Director Dubois continued, her voice calm and professional, "you and your hospital are accused of systematic medical fraud, unnecessary procedures, and patient endangerment. These are the most serious charges this board has ever investigated." Dr. Blackwell whispered urgently to his attorney, "We need to request a different hearing officer. There's a conflict of interest." "Your Honor," Dr. Blackwell's attorney stood up, "we respectfully request that this hearing be conducted by a different board member due to potential personal conflicts. Director Dubois looked directly at Dr. Blackwell for the first time. "Are you suggesting that my professional experience with healthcare fraud makes me unqualified to recognize it?" "Well, Director Dubois, my client believes that there may be personal history that could influence this proceeding." "Personal history?" Director Dubois' voice was ice cold. "You mean the personal history of your client falsifying medical records, destroying a healthcare worker's career, and putting patients at risk for profit?" The hearing room erupted in murmurs. Dr. Blackwell realized that his worst nightmare was coming true. The nurse he had tried to destroy was now holding his medical license in her hands. "Motion denied," Director Dubois said firmly. "My personal experience with medical corruption makes me uniquely qualified to evaluate these charges. This hearing will proceed." The evidence against Metropolitan General was overwhelming. FBI recordings of doctors discussing fraudulent billing, bank records showing kickbacks from medical device companies, and most damning of all, patient records showing a pattern of unnecessary procedures that had harmed dozens of people. "Ladies and gentlemen of the board," the state prosecutor said during his presentation, "this case represents the worst kind of medical corruption, a systematic scheme that turned patient care into a profit center, regardless of human suffering." Dr. Blackwell's defense team tried every strategy they could think of. They claimed the procedures were medically necessary, that complications were unforeseeable, that billing errors were clerical mistakes. But Director Dubois had seen every trick before, from the victim's perspective. "The evidence clearly shows a pattern of deliberate fraud," Director Dubois said as she reviewed the medical records. "These were not medical judgment calls or administrative errors. These were calculated decisions to harm patients for financial gain." The board deliberated for 6 hours before returning with their decision. Metropolitan General Hospital would lose its operating license permanently. Dr. Blackwell's medical license was revoked for life. Dr. Chen, Patricia Wells, and Janet Morgan all faced criminal charges and professional sanctions. "Justice has been served," Director Dubois announced as she read the board's decision. "This board will not tolerate medical professionals who betray their oath to do no harm in pursuit of profit." But Director Dubois' greatest satisfaction came from what happened after the hearing. The patients who had suffered under Dr. Blackwell's unnecessary procedures finally received compensation. The healthcare workers who had tried to speak up were vindicated and reinstated. From victim to victor. How one nurse transformed medical regulation. Read the cover story in Healthcare Weekly, featuring Marie in her director's office. Marie used her position to create stronger protections for healthcare whistleblowers, mandatory reporting systems for suspicious medical practices, and support programs for medical professionals who had been wrongfully terminated. "They tried to silence me," Director Dubois said during her keynote speech at the National Nurses Association conference. "But they gave me something more powerful than a voice. They gave me authority. Every injustice I suffered became wisdom that now protects other patients and healthcare workers." Dr. Blackwell, now working as a medical consultant after losing his license, would watch Director Dubois' speeches online, knowing that his attempt to destroy a dedicated nurse had backfired spectacularly. The woman he had called just a stupid nurse had become the most feared medical regulator in the state. "I destroyed my own career the moment I framed her," Dr. Blackwell would tell his wife. I thought I was eliminating a problem, but I was creating my own judge and jury. Director Du Bois' story became legendary in healthcare circles. She proved that integrity and patient safety would always triumph over greed and corruption. Her office became known as the place where medical fraud went to die, where patient advocacy mattered more than hospital profits or doctor egos. The best revenge against medical corruption, Director Du Bois would tell her staff, is to become so dedicated to patient safety that your mere presence changes the entire healthcare system. At age 38, Marie was appointed as the National Healthcare Fraud Director, making her the youngest person ever to hold that position. She had transformed from a discredited nurse into one of the most powerful healthcare regulators in the country. The woman who had once been called too naive for real medicine had become the woman who redefined what real medicine should look like. Her story proved that sometimes the greatest justice comes from the deepest injustice, and that the people who try to destroy your calling often end up creating your destiny.